What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down some very important things about the overall markets. We're going to talk about what's happening with this structure developing on SPY, the QQQ, and many other tickers, as we're seeing some buyers who are trying to defend, but simultaneously they've not been able to break resistance quite yet. I'm going to talk about some very important things that Donald Trump has said involving tariffs and the markets, what's going on with his tariffs, not to mention the next data report coming out for tomorrow, which is going to cause a lot of volatility. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing that way, please. Anyways, as far as the market's going, okay, we got the CPI report. SPY pumped to about 566, but instead of breaking through that, we got a rejection move. Then we bounced again, and overall, we're forming a possible inverse head and shoulders. However, there's no guarantees this will or will not pan out until we see which way we end up breaking. If SPY ends up breaking past 565, we're looking for an attempt to get back up close to about 570, and then we could be looking for a reversal structure. If we can't do that, if we end up rejecting again and we fail at 555, we're looking for a move back down towards these lows, if not to make new lows. And the balance that could be coming would not be ready yet if we end up doing that. So will the market balance? Are we about to see a big rug pull? Let's talk about this. What on earth is going on? Well, the first thing to remember is that as far as the market's going, we just got our CPI reports, and this is the first time in a long time we got a decent CPI. Now, for all items, CPI came down quite a bit, and then for core CPI, it also came down just a little bit. Not bad whatsoever, but I just want to say that CPI is a good catalyst to really help the markets. But instead of causing the market to get a massive bounce, we just got a small bounce and the market was just kind of consolidating. It really failed to get a big breakout so far. So CPI was not really enough to help the markets, despite the fact that it was decent. And we need more catalysts, especially involving like our tariffs and things like that, to cause bigger moves. For now, that is what's happening so far. Now, tomorrow is going to be Thursday, by the way. We have PPI data coming out an hour before the stock market opens at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This might cause more volatility, so make sure you're ready for this. We're expecting decreases on every end for PPI on the core side and also for all items. We're even expecting core to be very close to before, maybe a slight decrease for pretty much everything. PPI is the producer price index, very similar to CPI. This is going to give us more insights on wholesale inflation. Now, what's happening with Donald Trump? What is he saying? Why did that cause the market to actually see a small dip again? Donald Trump did announce that he once again wants to take back what has been stolen from America. Those are his quotes, by increasing tariffs to 25% on steel and aluminum imports. I actually have a lot of quotes from him. So Donald Trump said, and I quote, that I'm not happy with the EU. The EU has gone after our companies like Apple, and I will absolutely put tariffs on cars. Donald Trump said the EU doesn't take the US farm products or cars, and that he also has great respect for China on this regard, but there's going to be a lot of changes. He also said that Canada is doing a very poor job at dairy products. So he just went on about the products and the tariffs and such for today. Then Donald Trump said that tax policy is to stop other nations from taking our business. Tax policy would stop Ireland from taking our business, and there's still massive deficits that they can't even get out of. Then he starts to talk about how he wants to help negotiate a peace treaty between not a peace treaty, but a ceasefire. Actually, I think that's what he was referring to. Ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. He said we're waiting for Russia, and he will have to see what it takes. Then he said that there's going to be more tariffs with very little flexibility. April 2nd is going to be a very big day, and we have the right to adjust our tariffs. Right? He said that flexibility on tariffs can come, but there will be very little flexibility once we start. And he's going to be responding to the EU's counter tariffs. So, what's going on with this? What does Donald Trump mean by a lot of this? So, Donald Trump is saying that he thinks the US is being treated very unfairly. He's going on about how he wants to continue to increase tariffs as time goes on. But I don't think he has a whole lot scheduled until April 2nd, according to what he's been saying and according to his reports. So keep that in mind. So the last thing Donald Trump did was he increased tariffs to 25% for steel and aluminum imports. And then as a result of that, he also talked about the possibility of a recession just a couple of days ago. That led to a lot of fears, and that is what was triggering a lot more selling in the markets. But when we reach a point where we get lots of bad news, but the market does not sell off as hard, that's when there's going to be a temporary bottom forming. And that's when we know the market could try to base. So that's what we're going to be watching for to see if that happens or not. After Donald Trump increased the tariffs on steel and aluminum, we're seeing countries retaliating. So the European Union have said that they're going to be increasing tariffs on $28 billion worth of U.S. industrial and farm products. This will also be affecting aluminum and steel imports. he also mentioned, or they also mentioned, that they're going to continue to do what's necessary. They went on about that, and they're going to be kind of like retaliating. We saw Canada say the same thing. Canada wants to announce more tariffs on the $20 billion worth of American goods because of what's happening with these steel and aluminum prices. So that's what they said so far. Once again, guys, after the EU and Canada said they want to do this, Donald Trump is now saying he wants to respond again. So it's just madness, guys. It's just a war back and forth, like a game of chicken. One person's increasing tariffs, another country's going to respond, then we're going to respond. It's just madness. And that's what's going on so far. That is part of the reason why the market has been just dipping, kind of consolidating down here. We're still waiting to see how we end up responding. So there's three main catalysts, at least for this, maybe four catalysts that could be affecting this to a larger extent. The first thing is going to be our PPI data for tomorrow. It might cause a pop or drop depending on what the numbers look like. I'm obviously not a fortune teller. I can't make any promises. The second thing is going to be what Donald Trump does with his tariffs. As of right now, according to the schedule, he shouldn't be giving us way too many major ones, but you never know. Things could change depending on what he ends up saying. But his next date for, or his next deadline for major tariffs is going to be April 2nd. So we may have a couple of weeks of free time if he ends up not making major announcements for some time. That's something worth noting, but his words could still affect the market, so just keep that in mind. And then two more things would be the potential funding bill that the U.S. is going to be passing. It's still at the Senate's hands. Eventually, it's going to be coming to the president. And once they do this, they will avert a government shutdown. The deadline is going to be on Friday, so we'll see if the Senate ends up passing this. And the last thing would be any kind of like ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine could also affect the markets. So far, Ukraine has agreed to it, but we're waiting for Russia to see if they're going to end up agreeing as well. We're waiting for that. It depends on if things go in their favor as they negotiate, so just keep that in mind. So that's the crazy thing about the markets, right? We have this data, we have all these geopolitics getting in the way, we have Donald Trump's tariffs. It's causing lots of madness, lots of volatility. But from a technical basis, there is still potential for us to see some kind of rebound if we hold some key levels. Now, when it comes to our earnings, we just had Adobe announce earnings. Much of their earnings are quite minor, so I'm not going to go over the full details about them, but keep that in mind. There's still lots of fear in the markets, so please keep that in mind. Fear is making up the majority of our sentiment. The put to call option ratio is also at extreme fear right now, so keep that in mind. And there's so much fear. The VIX is starting to churn right here. If it continues, that could be a good sign for the markets, so we'll see about that. The last thing I want to say, guys, I do have a Mumu link for you guys if you guys are interested in signing up. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposits $2,000, you're guaranteed 30, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. But sign up with my link down below if you're interested before they run out. Now let's just talk about the charts. We're just going to focus on the charts from this point on. So let's just kind of think about all this political noise that's causing volatility. Let's set that aside for the time being. Let's just focus on these charts. Now, of course, we have to be open-minded to the fact that all this news and data will affect us, and that's why you want to look at two possibilities. Okay, there's a possible left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder forming on SPY. And if we could break 565, this thing is going to rock into the 570s pretty easily. The full measure move would take us back up towards like 575 or so. If we could break that resistance, that's the bullish case. If we get a good PPI and then we continue to pump even, after all this tariff news, that's the bullish case. But that's going to be under the assumption that this low holds and the low is in already, which is not guaranteed yet. Now, the bearish case would be that, wait a minute, there was an instance where SPY was forming kind of like an inverse head and shoulders, like right here, but the move ended up failing, and they don't always pan out because of manipulation and factors like that. So if you're a bear, if you think SPY is going to fail, you're going to argue that, wait a minute, despite this inverse head and shoulders, we got a very weak close today, which is technically true. This was not a good close. And if we end up rejecting here, watch 555. If that doesn't hold, we could be revisiting these lows. And if that fails us, I think we easily dip towards 548 to 550 right back down in the more bearish case. Okay? There's a bullish and there's a bearish case. What do I think is more probable? Honestly, guys, to me, it looks like we're trying to base. I'm not too confident about this close. I think tomorrow with PPI, we kind of push a little bit, just like how CPI caused this. Then we see another dump move, very similar to what we saw today. It depends on if can we hold these lows like this? Can we make a higher low and then start bouncing like this? If that's the case, then I'm going to be looking for some kind of breakout. If not, we're kind of stuck. I hope we get a move like this, but we need confirmation first. We need to see SPY break 565 to be bullish. Lose 555, we're not going to be in a good place. We could turn a bit more bearish. My gut tells me we kind of pop upon open, see a sell-off move as the day goes on. Then hopefully, if we make a higher low, then I'm going to be looking for a continuation higher. And then we could be looking for our bounce. I hope that happens, but it all depends on this data and what happens with tariffs and such. So watch your levels just to be safe. The chart does favor upside a tiny bit more, but I would like a stronger close. We need to see better looking moves. The QQQ is trying to bounce, but this is dependent on some factors. Notice that the triple Q is also forming a potential left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder. For us to be bullish, you want to see us close above 480. If that breaks, we're looking for 485 and eventually the 490s all over again. If we're bearish, you want to see us essentially lose 472. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down to about 468. Now, we could go either way, but I just want to mention that we are looking somewhat more bullish because if you look at the QQQ, we're trying to establish this low here. We're trying to start this uptrend like this. So this is a good sign for us. I wouldn't be surprised if we pop tomorrow after our PPI numbers come out. Maybe we get another sell-off move like this and we just slowly try to ride this higher like this. That could be like a temporary recovery move. There's a stronger possibility of that potentially panning out, especially as Nvidia and Tesla are trying to bounce. But we'll see just to be safe. On the Russell 2000, it's looking so-so. It's in the middle. It's range bound. We have a left shoulder, possibly a head, and a right shoulder may be forming. If we break 204, we're looking for an attempt to break out much higher. If we end up losing 200, we could be dumping back down towards 198. So it could go either way. But I like the fact that we have an inverse head and shoulders here. So this does look a little bit more optimistic. I anticipate a little pop upon open thanks to our very notorious PPI data, a little dip like this and some accumulation. And hopefully we start to push higher with big tech. We'll see just to be safe. ES is looking so-so to me. It is trying to form an inverse head and shoulders. So that's one thing in favor of bulls. Number two, when you zoom out of ES like this, you guys can see we have these channels. So we're trying to hold this support right here, right? We have this yellow trend line acting as our support. So we're trying to hold the yellow trend line, as you guys can see. So I need to see us break 5640 at the very least. If we break that, then this could start to push higher. If we end up rejecting, we end up losing around 55.50. I'm going to be bearish. Could go either way, but I like the fact that we have an inverse head and shoulders. I'm hopeful that this holds. Maybe tomorrow morning we see a little pop like we did with CPI. Maybe PPI is going to be decent. We dip a little bit. As long as we hold the low, we could slowly start to uptrend for 5,700 for a temporary rebound attempt. If we could hold this support like this, there's a good chance that's going to happen, but we'll see just to be safe. So please keep that in mind. For NQ, it's just like the QQQ. It's basically leading the way up. What I like about this chart is the fact that we're trying to hold this low like this. We're trying to make higher lows, which is a good sign. It's trying to reverse, but there's no guarantees yet. We need to break 19,780. If that breaks, 20,000 is coming. If we lose 19,400, we could be dumping back down. So we're in the middle. I like this accumulation, so we could be favoring 19,780 to start pushing for 20,000. A good chance we try to get some kind of bounce. On Bitcoin, we look a bit more bullish, somewhat more bullish. We're forming a nice inverse head and shoulders accumulation. I need to see us break 84,000. If that breaks, we're looking for 86,000. If we end up losing 81,000, we're looking for a dump back down towards 79,000. It all depends. But I really like this inverse head and shoulders, so I think we're looking quite promising here. So far, I think we're doing a good job to try to continue to bounce. So we'll see how this ends up going. Overall, I think we're doing a great job. For Nvidia, the 30-minute time frame is showing some strength as we're trying to rebound, especially off this bullish divergence. I like the fact that we got a strong close above 115. That's a good sign. We have a big test at 117 or 50 EMA. If we break that, we're going to be going back up to about 120 per share. So this bullish divergence is starting to pan out. There might be some kind of pullback move first off this resistance at 117. That would be very healthy. And then if we could break 117, I think we easily push back up towards these highs. If we end up losing 112, we could be dipping back down for this gap fill at 109. That's the bearish case. But I like this setup. Could be forming a potential inverse head and shoulders, depending on if we get some kind of like dip and bounce. If we make a move like this, I'll be watching this very closely. But if anything, it is looking a bit more bullish for now as buyers are trying to defend it. We're trying to get a temporary bounce. Tesla is looking promising, is trying to push on the 4-hour. We're at this yellow trend line, so we had this previous support becoming resistance. So we're watching to see if we can break above 250. If we hold above 250, we're looking for an attempt for 262.5. If we lose that, look for 244 is the main support. And if that fails us, we go back down towards like 240. So Watch and see how it reacts to 250 if we get some kind of pullback or not. If we break that, then we're looking for an attempt to fill this gap for 262. So watch that very, very closely. For Apple's making lower highs right over here. I just want to say that we're not looking too good. We're making lower highs and lower lows. We had some news come out that Morgan Stanley, I believe, they are downgrading their target for their overall iPhone shipments. So that is not the best for their revenue. However, despite that, we are still holding the support over here, way back here. We have the support around this 214 area. So I do think we might dip a little bit more to test that depending on our numbers tomorrow. And if we could hold 214, we're looking for a bounce. You want to reclaim 220 to turn back to bullish and try to rebound. If 214 fails us, we dip towards like 210. So it all depends if you hold support or not. I do anticipate a bit more downside, and we'll see what the reaction is depending on our data, but there could be a bounce coming. So one of the reasons why there's some ambiguity to my analysis is because of the fact that PPI is, a little bit uncertain. This may cause, either direction. I still anticipate a little bit of a pump upon open, and we'll see if we dip a little bit. And then as long as we hold our supports, there could be an attempt for us to try to rebound overall in the markets. For Netflix, we got a bounce as we predicted. I said as long as we're above 900, we're looking for some kind of rebound. If we lose 900, we dip back down towards 870. As long as we're above 900, we're looking for an attempt for 940. So could be looking for a move like this where we pull back a bit, then we try to bounce back up for 940. So watch to see if that ends up being the case. For MicroStrategy, we have a gap to fill up here, which is a good sign. We'll see how it ends up reacting to about 265 if we get some kind of dip move before it tries to bounce back up. We have this resistance around this 274 area, so we're going to be looking to see if we can fill the gap for 284. And if we end up losing the support, that's not going to be a good sign, especially at 250. So we could retest the support before it tries to break out higher. There is potential in this chart. I do think it might be going for that gap fill, but that depends on what happens with PPI and all the tariff news. There is still potential for that gap fill, so I hope that we end up filling it. So far, so good. Celsius is in the middle. We are forming a nice accumulation right here. As long as it does not lose 26.5, it could bounce. I do think we might test that first, 26.5, before it tries to see a rebound like that. So watch for that very closely on this chart. On other tickers such as Supermicro, we look a bit more bullish. It's trying to push with Nvidia. We just don't want to see this thing lose around that 40 area. As long as we hold that, it could try some kind of rebound. There's a tough resistance right here. We have previous support becoming resistance at 44. Might pull back a bit towards 40. And we'll see if we bounce again to make a higher low. Also, what you could do is kind of draw it out like this as a uptrend. So this could be like where we end up dipping. So between 40 and like 37, we could be retesting that before it tries to rebound. So I'm looking for a move like that first. For now, we are looking a little bit more bullish. Palantir is trying to rebound. We have a tough resistance around this 86 area. We might be touching 86, and we'll see if we can get some kind of rejection first before it tries to bounce, especially off this inverse head and shoulders like structure. If we reject and we can't bounce off 78, we're looking for a dip even back down to these lows. If we hold 78, if we kind of dip and hold 78, we could easily rebound for the 80s. For Rivian, we're bullish. If we could break past 11.07, we're looking for a 10 for 11.5. There's a good chance this bullish divergence pans out, especially as we dip and try to rebound like this. If we end up losing 10.8, we could be dipping more, so we'll have to see how this ends up going. For SoFi, we have resistance around this 12 area. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt for 12.61. We're making higher highs right now as we're trying to break this. I think there's a tough resistance at 12, though. That's the 20 EMA. We could get some kind of pullback move first before it tries to bounce, so just watch for that. But overall, it is a little bit more bullish. AMD is temporarily a bit more bullish. As you guys can see, we got a double bottom here. We need to see it break 101.5. If that breaks, we retest this trend line towards 104. If we end up losing 99, we could be dumping a lot more. So watch 99 as the main support. And if we break 101.5, we're bullish. And I think there's a good chance we try to break out even higher. ARM, it's kind of flat right here. We're looking for this 110 area to see if this holds or not. It might be testing 110, and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get from there. For Coin is trying to rebound here, so we'll see if we could break past 197. If 197 breaks, we're going to easily push for 200, then back up to this gap area. My gut tells me that it's looking promising. I think we have this very, very key resistance to watch for, but I think that we test essentially 197, we dip a little bit, and we might slowly try to break out for this gap fill, especially if Bitcoin pushes. We could be slowly pushing into the low 200s. We dumped so hard, so it is trying to rebound and recover some of the losses. So some upside to 197 could be coming. For Amazon, let's close out these lines. Amazon, if you look at this accumulation structure, we need to see it hold above 199. If that holds, we're looking for an attempt for 200 to 205. Might be a pullback move before it tries to bounce, so it does technically look a bit more bullish. Unless we lose 192, we could turn back down, but I'm seeing potential in this chart. On Meta, we look a bit more bullish. If we could hold above this 620 area, we're looking for an attempt for 639 all over again. If we can't hold 620, we're going to be looking for a dip back down towards the low 600s. So watch and see how this ends up moving. I'm hoping we get some kind of bounce. Microsoft is trying to bounce here. We're looking for essentially 385 as our resistance. We might dip towards 380 before it tries to push for 385, so we'll see how it goes. Google is looking quite good. We have 170 as our resistance. If this breaks, we could be looking for 172. If we end up dipping towards 168, we could be dipping a little bit more from here, but just notice that we have a nice accumulation, and we have an imbalance up here. So as long as this could break 169 per share, if we break that, we're going to easily push back up to 172. I need to see that for confirmation, though. Of course, it all depends on our data coming out involving PPI, so just keep that in mind. It also depends on what Donald Trump says. GameStop is kind of weak, could be dipping back down towards this, these lows over here, especially around this like 21.5 area. AMC is kind of weak. We could be dipping back down to about 2.75. DJT is a little more bullish. If we break 20.8, we're looking for an attempt for the 21s. The VIX has a bearish divergence. We have these gaps to fill, which makes me suspect it might dip a little bit more. We'll see if we bounce first and then dip, or we just dip from here. That tends to be bullish for the markets. The 10-year has a giant head and shoulders here. So I do think that this could be forming a little bit of a push before it starts to dip even lower because of what Donald Trump is doing to lower these yields. He's doing this as a result of the Fed to kind of pressure them to cut sooner. And also, the government wants lower interest on their debt. The dollar is kind of flat right here. So you want to see if this could break past 103.8. If we break this is going to be pushing more, and that could be an interesting sign. If it rejects and starts to dip, that could be a good sign for the market as well. It depends on these tariffs. So my view is very simple. I'm very unbiased. I'm very, very eclectic. I'm very open-minded to what's about to happen. I just want to say that when you go to our 30 minutes time frame, we could go either way. We are favoring upside a tiny bit more with this inverse head and shoulders, but make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. I want to see SPY break 565 to turn bullish. If we hold above that, it's going to be a good sign. That's going to depend on what happens with PPI, Trump's tariffs, and all the geopolitical news that's coming out, so keep that in mind. However, I remain a bit more optimistic, so hopefully we get that break. Hopefully we get a good PPI, and we'll see if the market's forming a base to get that bounce. I'll be back tomorrow morning before market open to give you guys another updates. For now, the bulls are gaining some more power, but they're not officially helping the market break out yet, so we have to wait and see. All right, so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a good night, and peace out.